the registrar's office, and I not only didn't drop the course, I declared my major in neurobiology that very day. What the hell is that? You know, the "I'll show you" response, I think, is fascinating. I don't fully understand it, but it's fascinating that, you know, the same exact experience can either lead people to feel like I'm a loser, I give up, or the precisely opposite psychological reaction. And I think it's not necessary, but it's very, very common to paragons of grit.
I think we're out of time. Hey, Angela, thank you so much. That was fascinating and phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am a psychologist, and I study achievement. Most psychologists who study achievement study intelligence. I think that if the last talk didn't convince you, and I have a suspicion you didn't need a whole lot of convincing, intelligence is only part of the story, maybe a very small part of the story. And it is, in fact, possible that we even have that small part of the story wrong in terms of intelligence being thought to be something largely inherited and not developed, something that is relatively immutable over the course of one's life. But I came to the study of all the other things than intelligence, everything else that made up achievement, a kind of a circuitous route. So I was 32 when I started graduate school. I turned to my left and to my right, and everybody else was drinking cappuccino and studying at 1 in the morning because they were 22, not 32. And so I actually think that my life story is a great example of actually not having grit, not having enough grit, maybe having some talent, but not actually having what I now study is actually one of the key and probably necessary ingredients of high achievement in any field that you want to consider. So what I did between the age of 22 and 32 was, well, many different things, all of which I think sounded good on a resume. See, I was a McKinsey consultant. I went to Oxford for a couple of years on a prestigious fellowship. I was the COO of a nonprofit website for parents to get school information. That sounds good. That was good. Sounds good and was good. I taught in various schools in New York and in Philadelphia and in San Francisco. And all of this added up to sort of, a great person to have dinner with because, that person had done a lot of things and had done a lot of interesting things and had done most of those things actually relatively well. But what I realized is that if you are a boat, a really fast, shiny boat, which is going quickly towards one destination, but then tacks to another direction to go to another port and then tacks again, essentially you end up being a really pretty, shiny boat that goes fast nowhere. And so my own kind of personal experience and probably my lack of grit actually led me to study this quality in some detail. And I'm going to mention something that I'll get to later in the talk, but it's called the 10-year rule. So it turns out that there is really no domain of expertise that has been studied where the world-class performers have put in fewer than 10 years of consistent, deliberate practice to get to where they are. So I started graduate school in 2002. I have 3 more years on my clock, which means many things, among which means I can't give up until I have at least put in my 10 years and see whether I've gotten anywhere. Psychologists have been interested in the distinction between talent and everything else for years, right? So before we had words to describe it, we were also probably interested in it. But here's a quote from Clark Hull, one of the eminent American psychologists of the early 20th century. He wrote a little review. He kind of reviewed the literature that was out there, which was quite easy to do in 1928. There was a whole lot less of it. He said, there's really 2 things. There's our talent, and I would, emphasize what Chris said. Talent is multifaceted. There's creativity. There's visual creativity. That's different from musical creativity. There's analytical talent. There's athletic talent. There's musical talent. But let's put them all in one category. There's intelligence as conventionally defined. And then there are all of those many things that are so much